Hi everyone, welcome all. Good afternoon. Welcome to another installation of Build Your One AutoCAD Tools That's IQ webinar series. Today we'll be sharing on working with blocks in AutoCAD. Hope you like it. Allow us to begin with a short introduction about ourselves. Shin, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Shin. I'm a technical support specialist based in Japan, Tokyo office, and I am currently supporting products such as AutoCAD and AutoCAD toolsets.
Thanks, Shin. Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm also a technical support specialist based in Singapore and handling AutoCAD architecture, MEP for APEC region. Thank you. So for those of you who are new to the Autodesk Help webinar series, a very warm welcome again. This series is aimed at sharing information with our users on the various AutoCAD features and toolsets available. Each webinar includes a 40 minutes presentation and a demonstration, and about 10 minutes Q&A session depending on the time we have left. Also, if you guys have any questions during the webinar, feel free to leave your questions in the question window, and all sessions are recorded and will be sent to you. The post-webinar service will be sent to all the participants after this webinar as well. Past webinars can also be found on our Autodesk landing pages. If any of you guys are interested in continuing to join our webinar series, feel free to sign up at our webinar landing pages to register. We have a vibrant community forum for AutoCAD customers, where you can have peer-to-peer interactions with other AutoCAD users to discuss new features or get help in troubleshooting issues. We also have the AutoCAD Customer Council. If you have a good ideas for the future of AutoCAD products, you are welcome to join our AutoCAD Customer Council and then provide feedbacks to our developers and then product designers. So this is the Autodesk Help webinar landing page. Our help webinars are available here even if you missed any of the sessions. We have separate landing pages for each region, such as Australia, Singapore, and India. So feel free to check them out. We also like to provide some links to our Autodesk Knowledge Network, AKN articles. This is especially useful for those of you who are new to our AutoCAD family. We have links to getting started, learning, and exploring, which covers the AutoCAD basics and the installation procedure. There will also be downloads for hotfixes, language packs, templates, all accessible here. Do note that product updates will not be available on AKN as they are only available to subscribers. If you face any troubleshooting issues, there is troubleshooting link to find possible solutions if you are in search of a quick fix. And if intend to get a new machine or upgrade your hardware, please check the system requirements for each AutoCAD versions in advance. Okay. Let me pass my turn to Shin and for the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophia. So now I will take over the presentation. Let me make myself the presenter and select my screen. Okay, so all of you should be able to see my PowerPoint slides right now. Okay, looks good. So without further ado, let's get started on the agenda for today. Today we will mainly be talking about blocks. In the first part of today's webinar, I will be covering the first three topics: creation of blocks, block editor functionality, and publish saving blocks. I'll be going through these 3 topics by demonstrating an example workflow on how we can create a dynamic title block. And for the second part of the webinar, Sophia will be covering a few tips and tricks, such as rename, count, that will be useful for you when working with blocks. So before we go into our main topic, even though I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with blocks, I just want to give a basic introduction for those who are new to AutoCAD who have joined us today. So what are blocks and why do we use them? By definition, blocks are complex compound objects made up of one or more entities combined into a single object. They are commonly used as symbols, parts, title blocks, etc. And in AutoCAD, we commonly use the following terms: block definition, block reference, and block attributes. So a block definition contains information as to what the block consists of, what objects, etc., and what are the various configurations that it has. And block definitions are saved within the drawing database. Multiple block definitions can exist in a single drawing file, or a single block definition can be saved to a single drawing file, depending on the user's preference. And a block reference is simply an instance of the block definition. There can be multiple instances of a specific block definition within a drawing. And last but not least, we have block attributes that are labels or tags that attach data to a block. So examples can include things like part numbers, prices, comments, and names. So using blocks do provide several advantages, such as helping you to save time by reducing the need for repetitive tasks. It also helps to ensure uniformity between identical copies of symbols, parts, furniture, etc. It helps to automatically update your block references even after you modify the block definition. It also helps to reduce file size and allow creation of custom components with intelligence. So the last point is particularly important because it allows users to build their own blocks repository based on company requirements and standards. So that's all we have as a basic introduction. For those of you who are still unsure of how blocks work, not to worry. We will be providing a demonstration right after this, which might help give you a better idea. So, as mentioned earlier, I will be covering 3 topics: creation of blocks, block editor functionality, and publish saving blocks. Instead of giving demonstrations for each topic, I'm going to demonstrate a simple workflow on how to create an example dynamic title block. And within this workflow, I'll be showing you how to create a block definition and how we can modify that definition using the block editor. Within the block editor, I will also introduce some useful functionalities such as attributes, dynamic block features like a base point, stretch, lookup, properties table. Most of these functionalities are extremely useful, especially if you want to have various configurations for your block. And once we have the block ready and functioning, I will also go through some of the ways we can save the blocks for future reuse using the blocks palette, tools palette, and design center. So hopefully the example I will show you today will be useful for many of you. So without further ado, let's move into AutoCAD. And AutoCAD should be showing on the screen right now. Okay, so yes, so today for today's webinar, I'm going to use AutoCAD 2021 with all the updates installed, and we will be mainly be working in this official demo drawing that I have specifically created for this webinar. So just to give you all of you an idea of what exactly we'll be creating, I have prepared a completed title block in purple right here, and I have placed it on a different layer called the completed dynamic blocks. And if we take a look at this specific block here, when I click on it, you will notice that there are several groups on the top left and the bottom right. And I'm able to modify the size of the title block however I want. I can modify it in the Y direction and in the X direction. And on the bottom left, you will notice that there are 2 groups right here. If I select on it, you will notice that there are a few A4 sizes that are appearing in the drop-down. If I select any of it, you'll notice that the title block, the size of it will actually change accordingly. So this feature actually uses the dynamic block lookup feature, which I will be demonstrating afterwards. And the other grip that I have here on the bottom left, when I click on it, you will notice that there are several themes available. So when I toggle between the themes, notice that in the metadata section of my block right here, the designer and checked by attributes will change accordingly as I switch between themes. So this feature actually makes use of the block properties table, which I will also introduce in the demonstration afterwards. Yeah, so now we will proceed to create the block that I have shown all of you just now, and I've prepared the necessary geometry right here in white. And we will start with creating a block. So to start off, we first need to create the block, and there are several ways to do so. The easiest way would be to create the block via the blocks panel on the top in the ribbon right here. And when I click on create, the block definition dialog box will appear. Alternatively, I can also just type in the block command in the command line, hit enter, and the same block definition dialog box will also appear. So for this particular block, I am going to name it as a title block to keep it simple. Next, I will specify the base point. So I will pick a point. And I will specify the bottom left point, which happens to be my origin, to be my base point. Next, I have to select the objects that I want to include in the block. So I will select all of these objects, hit enter. And if you notice in the same block definition dialog box, there is also settings for the block units. Currently, I have it set to millimeters, but of course you can set it to other units as well, and you can also set it to unitless. But one thing to take note, when you set it to unitless, the block units will inherit the drawing units. So take note of it if you happen to be using unitless. Yeah. So okay, so the rest of the settings looks good. I'm going to click on OK. And once that is done, if I select my block again and look into the properties, notice that the object type is now a block reference. So this means that I have successfully created my block. And if I try to insert the block from the insert button on the top, notice that the title block now appears as one of the selections. And I'm able to click on it and insert a new block reference right here. And for those of you who are not yet comfortable with the new insert method, for those of you who prefer the classic method, do not worry, we still have the classic insert. So if you run the command classic insert, you'll be able to see the old version of the insert dialog box right here. But for me, I prefer to use the new insert method to do so. Yeah. So from now, I'm going to add a few dynamic features to my block. So I will need to modify the block. And most of the time, we modify the block using the block editor. And to enter the block editor, there are various ways to do so. One of which is to select the block, right-click, and click on block editor. Alternatively, you can also click on the edit button in the blocks panel, click on it, and the edit block definition dialog box will appear. Select the block that you want to modify and click OK. Most of the time, the block editor will appear, but at times you notice that the block editor doesn't seem to appear. And in those cases, most probably the system variable block edit block might have been set to 1. So if you notice that your block editor is somewhat not appearing, there might be an issue. Always try to check your block edit block system variable and make sure it is set to 0. Okay, so Those are a few tips. Now I'm going to enter the block editor to modify my block definition. Okay, so currently I am in my block editor environment. You will notice that there is a block editor tab in the ribbon and the background is now changed to gray. So here I am going to add a few attributes. So if you notice in my completed title block, I had a few attributes that I have inserted for the designer and checked by and drawing space over here. So now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to add attributes to my block. And to do so, I can click on the attribute definition in the actions parameters panel. Click on it. And notice that the attribute definition panel now appears. And I'm going to add 3 different attributes. So the first one would be designer. Just going to copy it. And for the default value, I'm just going to put a hyphen so that I know whether there is a value inserted or not. Just in case, I'm going to click on OK. Insert designer attribute. I'm going to do the same for checked by. I'm going to put hyphen for the default value as well. Going to click on OK. Insert my attribute. And last but not least, I'm going to add a drawing name attribute. But for this particular attribute, I'm going to do something special. I'm going to insert a field. So I right-click, insert a field, and once I do so, this field dialog box will appear. And for this particular attribute, I want it to show the drawing file name automatically. So what I'm going to do now is to add a file name field, set it to lowercase, specify it to be a file name only, and hit OK. And once I do so, notice that now the attribute will show me the drawing file name automatically, which is what I want. So things are looking great. I'm going to click on OK, insert attribute, and save my block. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea of what changes we made, I'm just going to close my block editor, save once more, and now we are back to model space. Okay, and now if we take a look at our block, you will notice that the attributes are still not appearing. So there is one step that we still have to do, which is to sync our attributes. And we can do so by using the @sync command that is available in our blocks panel right here. So it's called @sync. What this command does is that it helps me to update the block references with new and changed attributes that I have just inserted into the block definition. So I'm just going to click on this command. Now AutoCAD is prompting me to, asking me whether I'm going to select a block. I select yes, I'm going to click on this block, click on yes. And once I have done a sync of the attributes, notice that in the metadata section of the title block, now the attributes are now showing. But it is showing as a hyphen, the default value, because initially when I inserted my block, I did not specify any values for these attributes. So this is as expected. Right. Okay, so now that my attributes are working perfectly fine, I'm going back into the block editor to add in more dynamic features. Okay, so now I'm back into the block editor. What I'm going to add now is the stretch. No, before that, I'm going to add the base point parameter. Yeah, so I noticed a lot of users are actually mostly dependent on the origin to specify the insertion point of the block. But I do have another recommendation, which is to use the base point. Yeah, so I'm just going to give a short demonstration. So if let's say I want to change the insertion point of this particular block, instead of having to move the origin around, which can be quite of a hassle, I recommend users to use the base point parameter in the authoring palettes. So what I'm going to do now is to specify the base point here. So for this example, I'm just going to change the insertion point from the bottom left to the bottom right. And I've inserted the base point here, and I'm going to close my block editor. Save the changes, and notice that the block definition is now updated. If I select the block, notice that the insertion point is now changed from the left to the right. But notice how my attributes are in a very awkward position right now. To rectify that, I'm going to execute another @sing command. Select my block, @sing this specific title block, and there we go. Yes, the attributes are now back in position and things seem to be looking pretty good, right? Yep, so that is how we can change the insertion point using the base point feature. Now I'm going to go back into the block editor to introduce other features as well. So let me just change this base point back to the bottom left because that's just based on my personal preference. Yeah. Okay, so remember how we actually had grips in the X and Y axis that helped me change the size of my title block. Now we're going to add that feature. So that specific feature is actually uses the linear parameter and a stretch action. It's actually a dynamic block feature. So to add that, I would first need to add two different parameters. So I'm going to add one linear parameter to specify the length. And I'm going to add another linear parameter to specify the height. So now I have added two linear parameters to my block, and I'm going to do a simple rename so that things are a little bit more clear for all of you. So this would be my length parameter. I'm going to change the number of grips to 1. And for this parameter, I'm going to change it to height and change the number of grips to 1 as well. By default, when you insert a linear parameter, there will always be two grips. You can change it by the command line, but you can also change it by the properties panel, like how I did earlier. In this case, I do not need two grips, I only need one, which is why I'm changing it. But it's really up to the user's preference. Okay, so I have specified the linear parameters in my block, but if you notice, there is a yellow warning sign on the bottom left. This means that there are missing actions that have not been associated with my parameters, which is why that is showing. So the next step that I need to do would be to add stretch actions to my parameters. So now I'm going to add stretch. Select on stretch in my authoring palettes. I'm going to select the parameter, which is length. Then AutoCAD will prompt me to specify a parameter point to associate the action with. So I'm going to click on my grip here. And next, AutoCAD will prompt me for the stretch frame. Now, the stretch frame, it is important to define the stretch frame clearly because it defines which objects are moved and which objects are stretched. So in my particular case, I'm going to specify the stretch frame as such. And notice how I actually include all the metadata portion within my stretch boundaries. This is because objects within the stretch boundary within the stretch frame boundary will be moved, and objects that intersect the stretch frame boundary will be stretched. So in this case, objects here will be moved, and objects that are intersecting the stretch frame boundary, which happens to be the 4 horizontal lines, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, since they're intersecting, they will be stretched. So yeah. So this is why I have created my stretch frame boundary as such. And next, I'm going to select the objects that will be affected by the stretch. And I hit enter. And notice how the stretch action is now added to my length parameter. Now I'm going to do the same thing to my height parameter here. I'm going to select stretch, select the parameter point, and specify the stretch frame. In this case, since it's going to stretch vertically, these are the objects that should be moved and stretched. So I'm going to select them, hit enter, and that's it. So notice the stretch action is also added to my height parameter, and the yellow warning sign is now not appearing. So this seems to be looking okay. So I'm going to go ahead and test my block. And now I'm in my test block environment. If I select my block, notice that now there are grips on the top left and on the bottom right. And I'm now able to easily stretch both sides and change the size of my title block however I like it to be. Pretty cool. Okay, so things seem to be looking pretty good, but notice if I bring this grip too far to the left or bring the grip above too far down, notice how my components start to overlap each other. So this is not actually perfect yet. So I'm going to go back into my test block. And what I'm going to do now is to add limits to my parameters so that the objects do not overlap. So what I'm going to do now is to select my height parameter. And under the value set in my properties panel, there is a setting called distance minimum. I'm going to set an estimate of 50. And for the length parameter, I'm also going to set an estimate of 150. And yeah, so since now I have set limits to it, I'm going to test my block once more. Select my block, and notice when I shift my grips once more, I'm no longer able to go past 150. And I'm no longer able to bring it any lower than 50. So this helps me prevent the overlapping of objects in my block. Looks good. Okay, now I'm going to close my test block environment, and I'm going to add another feature, which is the lookup feature. So remember in my completed test block, I was able to switch between different sizes. For example, A4, A3 via a drop-down. So that feature actually makes use of the lookup dynamic block feature. So I'm going to add that feature right now. So under the parameters tab, there is lookup. I'm going to add this into my block. I'm going to select the parameter, just rename it to, for example, size, because this lookup feature will determine the size of my title block. So I've renamed it, and notice how the warning sign is now appearing because there is no action associated with it. So next, I will need to associate a lookup action to this. Select lookup and select the parameter. And once I do so, the property lookup table will now appear. And because I would like to change the size of my title block, I will need to specify specific values for my height and length parameter. So I will need to add those properties. So I click on Add Properties, select Length and Height, click on OK, and notice how both properties are now added to my table. And yeah, so I'm going to add, for example, A5, A4, A3. I'm going to specify the length and height values for each of these sizes. So for A5, if I'm not wrong, it was 210, 148, 297, 210, 420, 297. Okay. Yes, so I have added the values for each of these sizes. I'm going to click on OK. And notice the warning sign is now gone. So seems good. So I'm going to go back into test block. click on my block. And once I click on it, notice that there is now a new grip on the bottom left, which I've added earlier. And when I select it, I'm able to toggle between the various sizes of my dynamic block. So I can change it however I want it. And I'm also able to override it by moving the grips. And even if I move the grips, I'm also able to reset it to a specific size that I want. So this is really useful if you want to reuse the same block definition for different plotting sizes, which is why I've added this into the demonstration. Yeah, okay, so seems good. I'm going to close task block and I am going to save my block. It's always good to save your work. So save the block and yeah. So that's it for the lookup parameter. The last feature that I'm going to add would be the block properties table. So in the completed dynamic block that I've showed you earlier, there was an extra grip at the bottom that helped me change between teams. And as I change between the teams, my designer and checked by attributes, the values also changed accordingly. So that is the feature that I'm going to add now. And that feature uses the block properties table. So I'm going to add it and specify next to my lookup parameter, specify the number of grips. And once that is done, the block properties table will now appear. So because I want to specify different values for my designer and checked by attributes, I need to add those attributes to my table. So I'm going to add properties, designer and checked by, click OK, and they are now added to my table. But because I want to select the teams instead of selecting each of these attributes via the drop-down list, I'm going to add a new parameter. I will name the parameter teams and specify the type to be a string. Click on OK, drag this to the front. The reason why I drag it to the front is because I want to select the teams instead of the designer and checked by values. That is why I dragged it to the front. And I'm going to specify each team names. I'm going to specify it as Sophia and Shin. For team V, I'm just going to name it Tom and Jerry. Okay. Now I've defined my teams. I'm going to click OK. And notice how my block properties table is now added to my block right here at the bottom. Once that is done, I will proceed to test my block. Once again, I will select my block and notice that there is now a new grip on the bottom left. And if I click on the grip, I can toggle between the different teams. And as I toggle between the teams, notice how the designer and checked by attributes change accordingly, like this. So pretty useful. Yeah, so this feature is extremely useful if you have components of blocks that come in various preset sizes and you want to attach the data for all of these sizes to the block. The block properties table will be a very useful feature to use. Yeah, so since it is working fine, I will close the task block now. Go back to my block editor. And yeah, so that's all for the dynamic features that I would like to introduce today. I'm going to save my block and close block editor. So yeah, so currently, if you take a look at this newly created block, it has the same number of grips as my the block that I have shown you initially. Okay, so now that this block is up and ready, I would like to introduce a few simple ways as to how we can reuse the same block for future drawings. So the easiest way would be to use the blocks palette. For those of you who are new to the blocks palette, to open the blocks palette, we can just run the blocks palette command in the command line, enter, and you will notice that the blocks palette will appear. And notice that in the current drawing tab right now, it will show you the block definitions that are defined in this particular drawing. And if let's say I want to reuse the title block, this specific block, for future drawings, I can right click, copy to favorites, and once I copy it, if I move to my favorites tab right here, notice how the title block now is now added. And I can simply open a new drawing, click on the title block, and insert into my new drawing. Once that is done, it will prompt me for attributes. I'm just gonna hit OK, and ta-da! I'm now able to use my newly created title block in a different drawing. Alternatively, for those who are more used to, for example, tool palettes, so we can open the tool palettes using the tool palettes command right here, hit enter, and on the right, I have my tool palettes open. And in the case where we want to add a title block to our tool palettes, the easiest way would just be to click on the block and drag it to our tool palettes. Oh, but it's currently showing me an error because I have not saved my drawing. So I'm going to just save my drawing once. Once it's saved, drag the block to my tool palettes, and there you go. I've added a title block to my tool palettes. And once that is done, I can also go open a new drawing and insert the title block from my tool palettes. Yep, and the edit attributes panel will appear. And here we go. There is my title block in a new drawing. Yep. Okay, and besides the tool palettes, another way to insert a block that was defined in another drawing would be from the design center. So for example, I've opened a new drawing here, and if I want to insert a block definition from another drawing, I can do it via design center. To open design center, I can just run the design center command or DC, open it, navigate myself to the drawing file where I have my block defined, open blocks. Notice how all of the blocks in the drawing are shown here, and I can just drag and drop my title block to the new drawing. And yeah, so those are the 3 different ways that we can reuse our blocks in different drawings. And yeah, so as simple as that. So I've come to the end of my small live demonstration. And now I will hand over my time to Sophia, who will share with you more tips and tricks when working with blocks. Sophia, please.
Thanks, Shin. I'm going to open up my slide like so. Hope everybody can see it. So thank you so much, Shin. I think it was very helpful information to work smart with blocks. Hopefully our attendees today can reduce documenting hours by using all those features efficiently. For me, I'm going to share more tips and tricks on working with blocks today. I'll go a little fast as we don't have much time left. Please feel free to leave your questions on the question window, then we'll help to answer them later. Thank you. First, I'm going to start with renaming blocks. If you want to rename the blocks, there is an easy way to change the name of the blocks with the rename command. This is applicable for not only for blocks, but also for all those layers, dim styles, and in text styles, etc. And you can also rename multiple blocks at once by using asterisk mark and then question marks. Let me show you how it works in AutoCAD. Here I have opened this flow plan, which is having multiple blocks. Rename command is not displayed on the ribbon, but you can just type rename in the background, then it'll bring up this rename window. Those are the blocks that you can rename with. And let's try to change chair 7 to chair 8. Then you can just type chair 8 from here and then click on rename to, and then it will update in place. But you have to click OK to update in the drawing. I'm not going to do it now, and I'll try to explain to you how you rename the multiple blocks. So in case you want to change like ABC, those blocks, and then want to remain the behind information as it is, then we can, sorry, then we can type ABC and add the star symbol back to search for those blocks. Then let's say if you want to change XXX, they have to add the star sign again, then click rename to see the updates. And in case you want to convert only the middle part of the name and you want to keep the numbers on the behind and the front part, then you have to change this letters into question mark, which will keep the letters as it is, and the back numbers as well to change into the stars. Then this middle part, maybe let's change into XX, rename to. Then you can see that only middle part of the letter has been changed. Okay, so this was how we rename the blocks. So it will be very useful for those of you who likes to organize your blocks with names. Let's move to the next tip. Okay, which is blocks. I'm going to introduce you a few useful block features that you can find in AutoCAD Express tool. Express tools are only available in full version of AutoCAD and Verticals products, and it's not available in AutoCAD LT. All those features are included in the blocks panel on the ribbon on the Express Tools tab, like this. So if you are using AutoCAD and not able to see these Express tools from the menu, you can download it from the location below. So let's explore these options one by one from AutoCAD again. Okay, so go to Express Tools tab, and then Blocks panel is on the left side. Let's pin it to open and start with Explode Attribute command. The command for the explode attribute is burst. Burst command uses to break attribute blocks with keeping the text as it is shown in the drawing. If you use explode command on the attribute block instead of burst command, written text will change into tag value, which is specified in the attribute definition. So for example, like here is the block attributes, and like you want to keep the text it is, but if you use the explode command, then you see that it changes into the tag values. Let's go back and then let's use the burst this time. Then you can see that it's exploded, but you can see the text has been changed into the text object and not the tag values. Okay, let's move on to the next feature, which is replace block. Is to replace the block from one to another in the same drawing. So let's say if you want to change this desk to this desk with this drawer, then click on replace block. There's so many names, but you can just simply click on pick to select the block, and you can see that it's desk 3, and pick the object that you want to replace with, and it will prompt you whether you want to purge the existing drawing. Let's say yes. Then you can see that the block has been replaced with the one that you have replaced with. So, but you can see that the direction and the layer remain the same. There's one thing that you need to be aware is when you replace the blocks, it will take it back to its original units of that block, as Shin mentioned earlier. So if you have brought a block in inches to millimeters, it will take it back to its original unit settings, and scale may look different. So check the units before you insert them. Next, list properties. If you click on the block, it will show you the list of nested object properties, like simple. And import export attribute is to export attribute information as a text file and then import it again after modifying the information from that text file or Excel file to update the attribute. Let me show you how it works. Let's use this title block again to export attribute information. I already have it here, but let's try again. Title block. Then it will create a text file in the location where you saved. Double click to open, then you can see all the information about attributes. Let's try to modify the information. Let's change the project name to test, designer to someone else, and check by other people, and click to save. So now the information is saved in the text, and then let's import this attribute information to this title block. Click open. Then you can see the information has been updated, as we say, modified in the text. Okay. So next feature is convert block to Xray. It's similar to replace blocks, but this time you can replace the external drawing with a specific block, and then it will be added as an Xray. So let's try it. If I want to replace this desk with the other desk type in other drawing, you can click convert block to Xray, and then I have already created the round table for my own, and click OK. Then it will prompt you whether you want to purge the original block. Yes. Then you can see that all the tables has been replaced with the one that I have attached. Then it is attached as an Xray, as you can see in the Xray property. Okay. Next is copy nested object. Is to copy nest elements inside of the block without exploding it. So let's say, for example, oops, sorry. There's a double door and you just want one door to be copied, then you can click on copy nested object, click the elements that you want to copy with from the block, move it over, then you can have it have the copies without breaking the block. So that's a cool tool as well. Next is extend to nested objects, trim to nested objects. Is is similar to normal trim extend with a defined boundary edge option. So for example, if you draw a polyline and then click on extend to nested object and click on specified edge, enter to extend, then you can see that it's extended to the specified edges of the block. Let's try the extreme nested object. Draw a polyline across the block, then specify the edges, enter. Then yes, this trim as expected. Okay, so those are the convenient block features in Express tools. I think those are very cool tools if you know how to use them efficiently. Let's move on to the next tips, which is counting blocks. So there are 3 ways to count blocks, such as bcount command for AutoCAD, and then select similar and qselect for AutoCAD LT. So bcount command is also an Express tool, but it's not displayed on the menu. This command will create a report of numbers of instances of each block in the entire drawing or in a selection set. Next command is select similar. This will help to select the similar blocks with various options like the image on the right side. Next, qselect will also allow select a specific block and will provide an information on how many of them are in the drawing. So let's go back to the drawing and then let me show you how it works. So if you want to count all the blocks in the drawing, then you type B count from the command line and just enter one more time. Then you can see that the report has been generated in the command history, like so. And for the select similar option, you can choose one item, then you will select all the similar items in the drawing, and then you can see that those are 66 items I selected, then you can count the blocks as well. Alternatively, Q select. This one also you can find the block with the name, let's say chair again. Then you can see the same result as the select similar command, but this time you'll see the items listed in the command history. So this is how we count blocks in the drawing. So now the result of the B count can be checked from the command history, but the counting block picture will be enhanced in both AutoCAD 2022 and AutoCAD LT 2022 as well. So please attend to our next webinar on what's new features for 2022 version. Okay. So that was tips and tricks for blocks. And then here we have collected some useful links for your reference. We also have links for the past webinars on the blogs, so feel free to check them out when you receive our presentation. I think we have few minutes for the Q&A session as the time already passed. Feel free to leave your questions on the question window, and my colleagues will help to answer many questions as possible for maybe around let's have it 5 minutes. Okay. So as mentioned, the recordings will be sent later, and also the answers will be sent later as well. So don't worry about it. Let me see any questions that I can answer for now. Shin, is there any good question that we can bring up for this time?
Yep. Yes. Wait, let me just have a quick check.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there are some questions regarding whether we can save the blocks to a template and use the specific template when we create a new drawing. The answer is yes. So during the demonstration that I shared with you earlier was just to show how we can save the blocks to specific palettes and reuse the blocks from there. But alternatively, you can also save your block within a drawing template and set the specific drawing template to be the default whenever you create a new drawing. That is possible within the AutoCAD options.
Okay.
Yeah, there are also a lot of questions regarding whether the commands that are shared today are usable in AutoCAD LT. The answer is yes, except for the portion where Sophia was sharing on Express Tools. Express Tools is only available in AutoCAD, so yeah, take note that the portion regarding Express Tools that Sophia was sharing will not be available in LT.
Okay, but it looks like we are running out of time, so I think we should stop here. But we'll be answering remaining questions and sharing a copy with you later, so don't worry about it. Our presentation ends here, but hope you enjoyed our webinar on working with blocks in AutoCAD today, and hope you guys have a great day, and please stay safe. Thank you.